In this session, I'll go through some of the import-export capabilities of VDB Builder. So I've launched VDB Builder, I'm in the workspace, and I've done a listing of the current contents of my workspace. So I have two data sources, Example DS, Salesforce DS, and I've got one VDB, VDB Example DS. And first I'll show how you can export them to your file system. So let's do a help. So that shows all of the available commands. And we want to do an export. So I'm going to do a help export VDB. This shows you a little bit about the VDB. It shows you the arguments that you're going to need for the export. You'll need the VDB name that you're exporting. You'll need to give it a file path. And the override is if you've got a VDB on your file system already, it will not overwrite the file on your file system. You have to explicitly tell it you want to overwrite it. So let's go ahead and export our VDB. Again, list, and I want to export VDB, the name of the VDB, and I'm going to export it to VDB example ds.vdb.xml. So that's all there is to it. It went ahead and let me export it since I don't have a conflicting file on my file system. So I've just exported my dynamic VDB to my file system. The export of the data source is pretty much the same. Let's do a help export data source. Same sort of format. You just give it the name of the source that you want to export and a file that you want to export it to. So let's go ahead and export the example DS. Export data source, example DS, and I'm just going to call it example ds.xml. And that's pretty much it. That shows you how to export the VDB and the data source from your workspace in VDB Builder to your file system. Let's take a look at the files that we exported to our file system. So this is the VDB. If you're familiar with the dynamic VDB format, this will look familiar. This is a very simple VDB. So that just shows the dynamic VDB XML file that you've exported. And this shows the data source export file as well, example ds.xml that we exported, and it shows the name of the data source and the properties associated with that data source. So now that we've exported the VDB and the data source to the file system, let's go through the reverse process. We're going to upload the data source and the VDB from the file system into VDB Builder. So if we do a listing in the workspace, we can see that we have two data sources and a VDB. So let's go ahead and delete the data source that we're going to import. And we're going to delete the VDB that we're going to import. Now let's do a listing. Now we're going to upload the VDB from our file system into VDB Builder. So the command that we need is upload VDB. So let's do a help to see what we need for arguments. We're going to need to supply a VDB name, and we're going to need to give it the path. And we're also going to need to give it an overwrite if a VDB with that name already exists in our workspace, which in this case it does not. So let's go ahead and upload and we're going to call it VDB example DS. So the first arg is the name of the VDB that we want in our workspace, and the second is the file system arg from our local file system. So there we've uploaded it. It says it uploaded successfully. Let's do a list. And you can see that we now have the VDB in our workspace. So we can do the same thing with the data source. We previously exported it. So let's do a help upload data source. That's similar, only we don't need to supply the name of the data source. We just need to give it the path to the data source file. So let's go ahead and upload data source. And the name of that file was example.ds.xml. You can see that that was successfully loaded. So both of them here have been successfully loaded. Let's CD into the VDB, just take a look at it. And we had the one model in it, so looks like we're good. Let's go back to the workspace. Okay, and that pretty much completes this session. We've showed how you can export from VDB Builder to the file system, and then how you can go the opposite direction, how you can import from a dynamic VDB file into VDB Builder or from a data source file. So if you're sharing with other users, this is one way that you can do it. Import it into your VDB Builder, edit it, and save it, whatever you want to do with it. Thanks again for joining this session. We hope that you'll join us for additional sessions.